It's raining outside. I've got my blanket in my lap. My dogs are snuggled up with me. I've got my coffee, and it's time for Summer Hikaru died. It's Romania Black, and oh my god! So yeah, episode 2 was amazing of this series. Episode 2 was so freaking good, and I'm so excited to get into this. I've gone back and rethought about the episodes, and my conclusion at this point, I had a couple things. The one note that I had, because I'm not into comments yet from Patreon or YouTube, those will probably come as we get further into this series. I can't help but watch ahead of y'all because I need to get ahead of spoilers, and plus, it's so prolific on social media. I have to watch, otherwise I'll see something and it'll be like, what's going on? So I did have a couple thoughts. With the cicada in the last episode, because the cicada is a big theme in this, is the dead cicada being eaten a representation of Hikaru being sacrificed for the town? But then Unuki takes over Hikaru, becoming the cicada at the end, with him coming back to life in this new form. Is that what it is? Is there a difference between Nonuki and Unuki? Are there differences? What other yokai are in the forest? Is Hikaru the one killing everybody, but Yoshiki doesn't know? If Yoshiki finds out, is he going to be okay? Because, I mean, look, we talked about this a little bit last episode, but this really is a series. I'm from a small town, right? My hometown had 900 people in it, and that's it. My graduating class was 23 people. Tiny. And so one of my best friends growing up in school was gay, and he was closeted, and he told us he had to be because he was afraid for his life. And so I think about him watching this series and growing up in a small town and how bigoted a lot of people can be. And not to say that they all are, because I live in a small town and I like to think that I'm open-minded and I have friends that are open-minded, but you kind of find those people. But there are very much people for religious or personal reasons that are bigots, and they are horrible people to others. And if they find out you are different than them, they will ostracize you, and it can possibly be dangerous. So is this series a examination of that? Is this series going to be like Yoshiki and Hikaru kind of taking arms against the people that would possibly threaten them because of that about themselves? I don't know. Yoshiki seems very much to be coming into his own and figuring out and exploring his sexuality by knowing his former best friend who's now been possessed and inhabited by a possible eldritch monster. So we'll see about that. But I love this series kind of exploring through a horror lens the idea of a small town and their prejudices, and this individual wrestling with his sexuality and puberty and emerging, and this possible idea of the cicada showing him emerging from his shell. Is he going to be like Hikaru and be something other than human? Or is he going to retain his humanity? But what does that say about his sexuality? And there's lots of layers with this, and there's lots to think about. And I love it. There was somebody in the Discord that was like, I'm getting into Summer of Hikaru. I've never really watched a BL before. And I was like, this is a very unique BL. I've never encountered a horror BL before. I'm sure they exist. I'm sure they're out there elsewhere, but this feels like when I tapped in and watched Given for the first time, right? It feels like you're watching something that's kind of at the pinnacle, and you're like, ooh, I don't know. So we'll see. But yeah, it's storming outside. There's supposed to be a storm go through, but I checked the radar and it's supposed to be like a little blip, so we should be fine. I've got coffee. I've got a blanket. It's so miserably hot outside. I'm recording this in summer. There are no cicadas chirping outside, but it is so miserably humid and hot. I have my air conditioning on, and I'm like, I'm just happy to be here and be that privileged. So yeah, y'all, I cannot wait for y'all to see these reactions when they come out. Episode 2 is such a blast, and I'm looking forward week to week to this series so much. It's making the weeks go by faster. Because it's the wait for each episode. I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta wait till Saturday until Summer Hikaru Died comes out, and then I can watch it. Y'all, it's just so good. So we're not gonna waste any more time. Last episode was really good. Last episode was Suspicion. Tanaka is getting involved in this town. We're gonna see where that takes us, but we're not gonna waste any more time. So thank you all for joining me as I watch Summer Hikaru Died. We're gonna get in episode 3, and we're gonna do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. series just getting better and better? Is it bringing me all the BL tropes and also these horror and action mysterious elements? Well, yes. Well, yes. So, okay. Y'all know if you've watched my channel, if you've watched any shows that I have reacted to on this channel, you know how much Romania is not a fan of the miscommunication trope. No, not a fan of it. Not a fan at all. So I don't like when there's miscommunication, especially if there's miscommunication that could be easily rectified by simple communication. Miscommunication happens all the time in our real world, but I like in my fictional stories for miscommunication to be settled and resolved because it gives us an idea of how to transfer such ideals into our own lives. That's kind of why we read stories, so that we can find relations to the characters and the scenarios and maybe apply what we learn from those stories into our own existence. And so that's, so I think that what Yoshiki does in this episode is very interesting. We're going to talk about this. I'm glad they resolved it somewhat in this one episode. So we need to dive into it, shall we? We need to dive into it. So what are we going to talk about? Well, let's talk real quick. We're going to put some BL tropage over here. We're doing watermelon colors today. Although I always think of watermelon as pink and red rather than red and green. So, or green and pink rather than red and pink, but we'll do it this way. And then we have our symbolism. You can hear the thunder outside because it's storming. Symbolism and questions that we still have to deal with. Yay. Okay. So let's dive into that, shall we? First of all, we need to talk about sunflowers and watermelon because those are the two things. We had cicadas last episode. This episode, we talked a lot about sunflowers and watermelon. And so for sunflowers, I mean, any type of flower has a lot of symbolism across different cultures. I wanted to look more at kind of Asian cultures, Japanese symbolism with sunflowers and not my Western perspective. So Evans.Inc. Talks a lot about sunflowers in their art blogs, but they talk a lot about Vincent van Gogh. But then they say if you travel east, the sunflower takes on, it says in the art of Vincent van Gogh, for example, the sunflower is an icon of expressive emotion. The Western painters and poets alike have long used sunflowers to reflect the emotional landscapes of the human heart, from blooming confidence to quiet devotion. So we take this idea of sunflowers, right? And the idea of blooming, which is an aspect of growth. And we also talk about devotion, which, is going to relate to Hikaru. And in turn, which is mainly going to relate to Hikaru in this episode. But then we travel east, the sunflower takes on a deeper, sometimes more philosophical shade. In Chinese culture, the sunflower is a symbol of longevity, good fortune, and vitality. It is believed to carry yang energy, active, warm, and life-giving. And it says, just like in the West, the image of a sunflower facing the sun's movement became a poetic metaphor for positivity, hope, and the pursuit of truth. And that's kind of what I want to tie into this idea of the pursuit of truth. Because a lot of this episode is about pursuing what is true about ourselves and about the situation, which is Yoshiki's struggle in this episode to get to the root of what's going on, right? In Japan, sunflowers have a more emotional association. After the Fukushima nuclear disaster in 2011, sunflower seeds were planted en masse in affected areas. These flowers were believed to help absorb radiation from the soil, a hopeful symbol of healing and renewal. For many Japanese people, sunflowers are now tied to resilience, memory, and the power of regeneration after a great loss. Well, this series, what do we have? What are we talking about here? Why, not only in the pursuit of truth, but we have the idea of resilience. We also have the idea of memories, which are tapped into in this episode. And also, I think most importantly, and you be nice, Huckleberry, the idea of regeneration after a great loss. Well, those are going to come into play quite a bit in this episode. So I'm glad that Evans Inc. has kind of got us hooked up. It says, despite cultural differences, one truth remains. The sunflower is a powerful symbol of transformation. Whether you're drawn to its Western meanings of joy and devotion or Eastern ideals of prosperity and spiritual growth, there is something deeply human about the sunflower's nature. It's a flower that doesn't hide in the shade. It grows tall, it follows the light, it stands bold, even in adversity. I just wanted to do this again. So, it is this idea of, it's basically this idea of transformation. So the note of transformation and the idea of standing bold and tall in adversity. Well, if any of those, everything about this sunflower symbolism is applying to this episode, and we're going to talk about it as we go through with Hikaru and Yoshiki's adventures this episode. As for the watermelon, obviously it being a symbol of joy and a symbol of refreshment, but I did like, there was an article by Yuri Minamide for Medium's website that said that in Japan, the water can also become a symbol for reverence of nature. So this idea of watermelon as a reverence of nature, I think applies rather well to this because as far as we know, Unuki or Nunuki, or we're going to talk about this in this episode, is tied to nature and the forest and all of that. So we need to get into it. So yeah, that's our lesson. This is our brief symbolic lesson of sunflowers today. And because sunflowers are focused heavily in the first part of this episode, it felt natural to kind of break that down. So this episode's called Denial. We had replacement with Hikaru being replaced. We had suspicion of something being up. And now we have Yoshiki dealing with the possible denial of his feelings and the reconciliation towards that. And it's like, here we go. So I think that I honestly feel so bad for Yoshiki in the sense, and I'm glad he's come to terms with it in this episode because it needed to happen at some point. But I cannot imagine having to reconcile with the complexity of, here's this man that I've loved since I was a kid. He's right in front of me, but my mind knows he's dead and this isn't really him. But the being that has taken over his body is accessing his memories. And there's confusion with Yoshiki of, am I in love with Hikaru? Or am I in love with the monster that's possessed Hikaru? Which is it? And I think he kind of comes to terms with it in this episode. He kind of realizes, oh, I'm in love with the monster. It's like, yes, you are. So, okay. And then Hikaru is, I feel like the moment that Hikaru, we're going to talk about it with the tropes, the moment that Hikaru opens up and he's like, I'm so confused. I don't know which emotions are mine and which ones are Hikaru's. That's when it all comes out. And again, I'm so glad the episode that this series used communication to break through the miscommunication barrier and be like, oh no, this is what's going on. We're all good, right? So yeah, they talk about the watermelon scene where he's like, I'm going to gobble it up like they do in the comics. And then we see him like gobbling it in front of Yoshiki, which here's the thing. The Anuki is responding and basing what it does off of the memories it has of Hikaru, but its personality, I know that Hikaru they talk about nuances of how Hikaru and Anuki are different. Like Anuki is like gung-ho for horror and learning new things, and Hikaru would shy away from that. But there are moments like in here where I'm like, they are kind of similar. And so then that leads to that complexity of what is Anuki and what is Hikaru? Because we're only getting bits of Hikaru from the past in memories. We didn't really get to experience much with him before he died. So it's like, and then there's the dad, the whole thing with the dad that's interesting because he says, one time my dad's friend ate a seed and turned into a fully striped watermelon man. And they're like, what happened after that? And he's like, he died. And then Yoshiki's like, well, I just swallowed one too. I don't want to die and I don't want you to die. And that's when the dad shows up to like, they're like, help us. You got to keep eating. You'll be fine. So yeah, and then we have the introduction, which we'll skip the intro for right now. So yeah, so was the dad aware that Hikaru and Yoshiki possibly had a romantic relationship? No, I don't think so at all. I think when he had the talk with Hikaru about finding a girl to settle down with, I think he just thought that Hikaru and Yoshiki were friends. They were just kids, they were just friends. He did not realize the extent of Yoshiki's feelings, if anything. Because here's the thing, at the end of the day, we don't know if Hikaru, as a human, loved Yoshiki. We have no idea. We will probably never know, because Unuki is only able to respond to experiences, not actual emotions, like memories, but not the experiential feelings that are associated with those memories. So even if Hikaru has all of these memories of Yoshiki, there's no emotional connection attached to them. So Hikaru knows things about him and Yoshiki's past, but he doesn't know if Hikaru was attracted to him. He just doesn't know. And we, the audience, will never know. So that's what makes it complicated, because now it's like Yoshiki is here in flesh and blood. His feelings remain. They've always been here. But Hikaru, it's the monster's feelings now, not necessarily Hikaru's himself. And we've established that the monster is lonely. So the monster himself is lonely. They've established that in this story, that that's a thing. And that it tries to hurt others. It attaches itself, because the dad says that Unuki is lonely and will attach itself to the Endo family and protect them and their family / loved ones, or specifically their partner. But it could kill the others out of jealousy or out of fear that they'll take away that individual from Unuki. And so there's some kind of ritual. And we know that the dad died around the time Hikaru went to the mountain. Now, the village knows about this ritual, because the village was like, oh, the ritual failed before. Maybe that's why Unuki's come down from the mountain. The village knows. They're in on something. And I think it's important that we also establish the idea here, and let me put this back up here. The idea here of the childhood friend trope. Because Yoshiki says that it was just Hikaru and Yoshiki. Now, those of us that are part of the queer community, or have friends and family that are part of the queer community, know that your sexuality is not really a choice. You are attracted to who you are attracted to, and there's nothing you can really do about that. You can be in denial of it. Like this episode, you can be in denial of it all you want. But at the end of the day, you are what you are. And so, despite the fact that it was just Hikaru and Yoshiki, I don't think that would change Yoshiki's attractions. They would have came out one way or another. However, I do think that it ties in the childhood friendhood trope of, oh, you were the only person around me growing up, so I got closest to you. Now, that enters this new complex field because Hikaru is dead. This is Unuki. So, this is Unuki, not Hikaru. So, Yoshiki is attracted to the monster. And the monster's attracted to him. But it's in the body of his dead former best friend. So it's complicated, you know? But there's this ritual. The dad died around the same time that Hikaru went up into the mountain in episode 1. So what does that have to do with anything? The mystery deepens, but I have a feeling that it's connected to that. So yeah. So Kurebayashi. Rie Kurebayashi. We're going to put her over here. So Rie Bayashi, she has lost someone to the mountain as well. We're going to talk about that. Her experience is interesting. She throws a lot of mixed signals in this episode, because there's a part of me that's like, is Rie going to be a ally to them, or is she going to be a hindrance? Because honestly, when Hikaru found out about Rie on the phone, he didn't immediately go after her to gain revenge on her. So that makes me think, okay, in all honesty, I know most people in the comments would be like, oh, bitch, it's so easy to tell. It was Hikaru that killed that old lady. It was her all along. But honestly, I'm like, yeah, if it comes to find out that it was Hikaru, I wouldn't be surprised. But just based on this episode, it makes me question it because I'm like, Hikaru didn't immediately go after and get revenge on Rie when this was over. Not that we know of. Unless he did and it's been off screen and we're not going to find out till next episode. But I'm like, I don't think it was him. I could be proven wrong. I may be totally wrong. I think there are two spirits. I think that one is Hikaru and one is this other one. I think Nonuki and Unuki are two different entities. I think that we can't rely upon what Yoshiki says as fact because he's an unreliable narrator. I don't think we can rely upon what Hikaru says because he's an unreliable narrator. But I don't know. I could be proven wrong and they could be the same entity. They kind of seemed like the same entity at one point in this episode when he was getting mad. But I don't know. There's a part that's nagging at me that makes me think that the village is going to scapegoat Hikaru. And I'm going to call him Hikaru instead of Inuki for now. Because Nonuki and Unuki might be the same being and it's just a translation error or it's a typo or I don't know. But I'm going to call him Hikaru for now to make it simple. But I have a feeling the village will scapegoat Hikaru into being the cause of things that are bad happening. And I just have this suspicion in my mind that it's not Hikaru's fault. That it's something else is also involved that we don't know about as the audience yet. Or there's a third party involved. I don't know. The moment we saw that spirit swinging in the forest with its head swinging, I was like, there's other entities in this forest. That means there could be other things causing havoc. It might not be Hikaru's fault. Hikaru's over here just hanging out with Yoshiki. He's not trying to hurt the village. So what do we do? I don't know. But anyway, so Yoshiki is trying to figure out, do I contact Rie or not? Do I contact her? What do I end up doing? And he brushes it off for the moment and visits Hikaru's mom, which one thing this series is really good at is that Hikaru looks like a mix of his mom and dad, which I thought that was really clever. I thought the series did a really good job with that. So kudos. Good work, show. That was fun. I feel bad the mom's by herself. Also, I'm like, is the mom in on all this? Does she know what's going on? Does she know about the ritual? What's happening? Now, walking into this room where he sees Hikaru, sees the stomach, sees the neck, focuses in on those two areas of skin. We're going to put this as a trope. We're going to put this down as a trope. So it's the idea of the skin tease. Skin tease on a hot day is what we're going to call it. Now, did I also catch the sexual innuendo where he's like, oh, I swallowed the seed to the watermelon because sometimes semen is known as seed? I did. Sure did. But, maybe that was not intentional, but I caught it. So there's that. We're going to talk about some of the other word choices in this. Honestly, this opening scene where he focuses on Hikaru's neck and stomach, it reminded me of Twittering Birds Never Fly. There's an OVA called Never Stay Gold. You should watch it. It's great. But one of the characters has a moment just like this with another character where it's hot outside, there's a fan blowing, and there's skin and everything, and that character is clearly attracted to them. It immediately reminded me of that. So yeah. And Hikaru's like, are you going to stare at me without waking me up forever? Looking like the main character from that old video game. When he calls Yoshiki a coward, I'm like, yeah, Yoshiki kind of is being a little cowardly in this moment because he doesn't know what to do. But then they wrestle a little bit. And the mom seems to not be, seems to think that, does she know that that this is not her son? She's the mom. Does she not know this is not her kid? Or has she accepted it and is like, I would be interested to see later on if the mom confronts Yoshiki and she's like, I know that's not my son, but is everything okay? That would be freaky and crazy. So we'll see. And so he ends up bringing watermelon. Now, to be fair, Yoshiki is very concerned because all of this stuff that Hikaru is going on about with the watermelon, he knows from memory. And so he's confused, being like, is this really, the Hikaru I knew, or is this the monster? And he knows in his heart and mind what the answer is. He's like, now I'll turn into a watermelon man. Now, at the time when he said that, Yoshiki seemed to get a little bit upset about how he said, now I'll turn into a watermelon man. And I wondered if Yoshiki was maybe thinking that Hikaru was kind of making a mockery of that memory because he didn't fully understand, like, the emotional... Because they were crying. Like, those two boys were crying, thinking they were going to die from eating the watermelon seed. And here, Hikaru kind of brushes it off like it's not, like it's a funny memory, when that was not at all the emotional attachment that memory has for Yoshiki, which is fascinating in itself. But in the reaction, I was also like, memories you had when you were a kid that you look back on and you were really distraught about, and then you think back on it as an adult and you're like, why were we even worried about that? Wah, wah, wah. Oh, we're going to turn into a watermelon man. He, how silly were we back then? You could also say that Hikaru was deriving that interpretation from it, but the memory's a little more fresh in Yoshiki's head, so he's, has a different reaction. And then again, you want to play Smash? Do you want to smash? That representation there? And he's like, no, I'm not in the mood. He's like, whatever. One thing about Hikaru is, in this form, he does not push Yoshiki to tell him things. He leaves it wide open for Yoshiki to communicate. Whether Hikaru knows something is up or not, he doesn't want Yoshiki to hate him, so he doesn't confront him about it. And so we have this, we're going to talk about this trope in here in BL, but the idea of non-confrontational to avoid the breakup. I'm literally watching Cherry Magic the same time I've been watching this series, and a lot of these tropes have come up in Cherry Magic too, which is really fun to see it from a different context in this series. But yeah, Hikaru's not bringing it up because he doesn't want Yoshiki to hate him. So he's just waiting for Yoshiki to talk to him. And meanwhile, Yoshiki's having this, this complex... I love when it goes to the VHS quality and the sunflowers all wilt and die, because it's literally bringing him back to the idea of him being in the woods. And I want to kind of like try to pause and see what we saw there. But him being in the woods, the sunflowers dying. And then there's him finding Hikaru's body. And he's looking, and the one eye is like all red and there's blood going down into it. Like the body's dead. So there's that. And it looks like him finding the body. Yeah. And then from that eye, there is a Nuki coming out of it. And then him being shocked about that. And then the sunflowers are reborn and they're better again. So yeah. So Yoshiki has figured out, he's like, I got a lot of problems. I got a lot of problems with this. I need to come to terms with the fact that the Hikaru I knew and loved from childhood is dead. This is not Hikaru, but he's in his body using his memories. What do I think about that? What do I do about that? And I'm glad that Yoshiki reached out to Rie, because I feel like he needed to at least find out what her thing is and at least hear her out, so then he can make an informed decision of what he wants to do next. And whether she supports it or not is not her business. It's, whatever he wants to do. But this idea of pursuing truth. Yoshiki's like, I need to know more of the truth. What should I do? What do I need to do with this? He's being resilient. I need to stand tall in adversity. What do I need to do to find out so I can move forward and do right by me? And he's like, I can't keep doing this alone, acting like everything is normal. And that's kind of the big thing he goes through this, is that he can't keep acting like this is the Hikaru he knew and loved as a kid. He can't do that. He's going to go crazy because he knows it's not. And you can't just keep pretending, right? So he finally, is like, because what do you say there? He's like, this is fun, just me hanging out with you. Thanks for the watermelon. And he's like, where is that coming from? And Hikaru's like, well, I can't lie to you. So I don't know. I guess I just want to make sure you knew how I felt. And for Yoshiki, I feel like Yoshiki in that moment is like, would Hikaru have ever done that? Would Hikaru have ever admitted that he just wanted Yoshiki to know how he felt? Like Anuki is very open with his feelings for Yoshiki and very open with how he feels. And I don't know if that's him drawing from being in Hikaru's body, if that emboldens him to do that, or what the case may be, or if he's a spirit that just never had the ability to say it out loud. The thundering. But Yoshiki's like, I feel like Yoshiki's saying, I need to be at the same level. If Hikaru can be this open-minded with me and this honest with me, I need to be to a point where I can do the same. And I'm not at that point yet. So when Hikaru like gets up, when he like sees him sleeping there, he's like, he snored up a storm, fell asleep there. That's when he decided to like text him, to text Rie. But we see the dad with the two of them, right? It was around that time when Hikaru's dad died. Yeah. And we see the logging company. Interesting that his hat has the logging company on it. So was he working for the company that was actively destroying the forest? And did they have a pact with Anuki or not? I don't know. It's been a while now. His dad went to the mountain one day. The mountain that nobody's allowed to climb. Uh-huh. It was around the same time of year that Hikaru went to the mountain. Yep. And then it shows they're like, I'm assuming they're both in suits and everything. I'm like, is that their graduation or are they at the funeral? What a goof. So I'm like, were they at their like middle school graduation there, or because it looks like they're maybe holding diplomas, or are they at a funeral? They're both wearing black suits, so I don't know. But yeah, in this village, Hikaru was the only kid my age. So we spent our whole lives together. But the Hikaru in those pictures is gone now. And he's like, I can't keep doing this. The Hikaru in those pictures, why am I going along with this when I know that it's not true? And then, yeah, him vomiting and everything. I don't blame him because he's dealing with a lot of complex emotions. So he ends up texting Rie to meet with her. I do like the two watermelons where you have the one watermelon on the one side that Hikaru's ate and then the one that Yoshiki hasn't touched yet. Fun times. Now, when Hikaru saw the text to meet Rie, he's like, well, who's he meeting? I thought he was going to go after her and kill her, but apparently so far she's apparently alive, as so far as we know. So I'm glad that we kind of had the trope of the jealous BF again. But what I like about what Hikaru tells him later on is he's like, I just want to know who you're talking to. Like, why are you being secretive? And I know it's not my business, but, you know, why are you being secretive around me? What did I do? He's like, I'm very open with you. Why are you keeping things back from me? So she meets him, and she seems like she's a dance instructor, which is interesting. I wonder if she's going to be tied to, like, some ritualistic dances or stuff for the mountains. If this village is, in fact, a cult. But they go to... where was the diner? It's an American-themed diner they go to. The Casual Diner America. I mean, as an American, I love that it just looks like an old-fashioned diner. And the main thing is just getting, like, giant portions, like a big parfait. That's hilarious. Although that parfait has way too much fruit on it for an American parfait. Add about 3 pounds more chocolate and less oranges, and you've got it. So then Yoshiki's like, let's just get to the bottom of it and talk about it. And so she's like, can you tell me what happened? And I love the symbolism of the storm clouds rolling in. It felt very thematic for how it is outside. The rain clouds moving in, the thunder and lightning, setting the ambiance for the episode. And she's like, so it was your best friend that died. She's like, thanks for telling me. You tried really hard, huh? So then he's like, well, what makes you say that? You shouldn't be looking to punish yourself. And get your head on straight, which again, the language of getting your head on straight, get back to normal, do what needs to be done. Like that's being brought up in this. And so she's like, getting punished by someone is just a way to make things easier on yourself. So in that case, she's saying if you let someone hurt you, then that makes it easier for you because you can just blame that person. You're like, oh, well, Hikaru's hurting me, so it's his fault. It's not my fault. It's a way of deflecting responsibility, right? I also like that during this entire conversation, we not only have like an exit sign that's pointing away from her, which is what he ends up doing. He doesn't go with her advice, he goes against it. But also, we have her looking over at this family with this husband and with these two kids and kind of relating it to her own story, which is interesting. So, anyway, it makes no difference to the dead. Like, don't blame this. Don't let this get blamed on someone else because they're dead. They don't care. But both of us need to face the truth. We're desperately clinging to those loved ones we lost. And he's like, both of us. So, we find out that Rie, she was talking about them both clinging to the past. Now, her clinging to the past is going to come up in this fact of the village and everything. And she's like, well, I'm sorry for bringing all of this up, though. I didn't mean to get all gloomy. But if you two are mixing, well, you must be close. I assumed it was a girl. So she's not opposed to them. She doesn't outright tell him that it's wrong. She doesn't tell him that it's wrong that it's a guy that he's with, which, you know, I guess it's like allyship from her. But she said in the last episode, she's like, if you mix too much, you won't be human anymore. So maybe she's just worried about him retaining his humanity, not necessarily that it's a guy or a girl that he's with. But yeah. So she's like, oh, we want those 2 new giant parfaits you got. I also like the water melting, like the ice is melting. We're getting to the core of things. She's like, let's cut to the chase. Have you noticed eerie things happening across the town and villages? So there's lots of different villages interspersed in this area, right? There's some kind of distortion creeping into these parts. Strange incidents, impurities. All this is foreign to you, isn't it? We're getting visitors who shouldn't be here. And the town and villages are slowly going mad. So we have this talk about strangers. Which, look, I want to believe that she's a good person, and I want to believe that she's going to be helpful to Yoshiki. I do question some of her motivations and some of the things that she thinks, because when I hear her talk about the strangers coming in that shouldn't be there, and the town and villages going mad, I think of Uzumaki and that whole message with that and outsiders, but also just the message of outsiders in general. Again, I grew up in a small town. There's close-knit communities. There's tight blood bonds there. I mean, look at Hikaru and Yoshiki in themselves. When you introduce an outsider, it questions those bonds, and it also, small towns don't usually adapt well to outsiders. Because it's like, well, what do you know? Where are you coming from? We've known each other for years. Who are you? So there's like kind of a wariness to new people that come into the scene, right? And I think that Yoshiki in this episode has to kind of overcome his own prejudice. Yoshiki realizes in this episode, the prejudice he's giving upon the monster possessing Hikaru is the same prejudice that's being put upon him for his sexuality. And he's like, oh, let's not do that. That's not what we want to do. And I was like, because that's essentially what it is. She's just saying, well, these are, these visitors, these strangers shouldn't be here. They should go back to where they belong, where they came from. Never mind the fact that there could have been factors that led those entities to come into your space that were indirectly caused by you. Let's not bring up that fact, which seems like it could have something to do with like the forestry, the construction people in the forest tearing up where these spirits reside that could possibly be pushing them to the villages themselves. We're not going to talk about that, and maybe Ree doesn't know about that personally, but she's just talking about the vibes that are going on. She's like, here's what I think it's causing all this, the thing that replaced your friend. I don't know how to describe it. It's a huge mass of something straight out of hell. But the moment I noticed its presence disappear from the mountain, that distortion spread like wildfire. Maybe it needs to be in the mountain to prevent the distortion from spreading. So, okay, with what she said just there, I think that inadvertently, Inuki is causing the problem. But I don't think Inuki is intentionally causing the village distortions to happen. I think what's happened is that Inuki I think Anuki was guarding the mountain, and then when it left with Hikaru, it's kind of like the hen house was locked shut, and then Hikaru opened the door to the hen house and walked out, but couldn't shut the door behind it, so everything just kind of, the chickens all ran out, and nobody could keep the hen house shut. So I think that's what's happened. I think that Hikaru, since they left, it now the mountain, all of the like evil energy has escaped. Which, here's the thing, having been said that, with the evil energy escaping, even if you put Hikaru back up in the mountain, is that necessarily going to make all of the energy follow him back with him? Probably not. So it's kind of like it's a too late scenario. You've unleashed all this energy by Hikaru absorbing Anuki's presence. So now you can't go back. Once you tip over the glass of milk, it doesn't matter how much of it you try to take your hand and scrape it back in the glass. You're not going to get it all. It's not going to work. If that's even possible, it'll be a fraction of what it was. So it's kind of like it's spilled milk. You can't undo that. So that's my theory, is that I don't know if Anuki and Nonuki are two different presences. I don't know that at this point. After watching this episode, my theory is kind of altered a little bit, where I don't know if Nonuki and Unuki, are they the same being? They might be. They might be the same being. Again, I don't know why Hikaru denied killing that old lady unless he was afraid that Yoshiki would leave him. But he didn't kill Ri, to our knowledge, so where does that leave us there? I don't know. But I do believe that they were a guardian of the forest. And they lived this, like, lonely existence in the forest protecting it, and they were all alone. And then they had the Indo family. They did some kind of ritual to keep it going, but the ritual failed when Hikaru died, and then Anuki inhabited the body of Hikaru. But now that he's inhabited it, the forest is unprotected, and so is the village where all the evil is seeped out into it. It made me wonder if it was kind of like I don't want to keep referencing Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, because I do that a lot, but if it was one of the things where Anuki was keeping the negative energy, like if they did sacrifices and shit in this woods, because it seemed like some bad stuff went down in there, would all the negative spirits and energy be contained in the forest? And the moment that Hikaru leaves, those spirits are going back down to, like, take their revenge upon the townsfolk? Could be. Could be. I don't know. We'll have to see. But it could be. It could be the townfolk are getting, like, revenged upon from the malevolent spirits that were being stuck in the forest. I don't know. So that has to be connected as well. To be honest, I'm scared silly and I want to get the heck out of this town. But what does she say there? Says she has a mother-in-law and a daughter that she has to take care of. Yeah. They are here, and so she can't leave the village. Now, she says, my oldest son already left a while ago, though. So she has this mark on her finger, like where the ring was. It doesn't look like a tan line. It looks like a scar. So was her ring finger chopped off? Could have been. She said, my oldest son left a while ago. And then he says, well, just now the both of us. Ages ago, my late husband suddenly came home one day. But it didn't go well. He ended up giving my son a wound that would never heal. Okay. I would have given anything to have him back in my life again. But you already know that, don't you? Here's my theory. I'm going to go out on a limb. I got a theory, especially after Hikaru grabbed the arm of Yoshiki. Here's my theory. This is my crackpot theory that I've got based on this episode. She seems like she's a little bit older. She seems like she's in her, like, 50s. I don't know. We don't know exactly how old she is. This theory could fall apart if she's not that old. But I wonder, is she Tanaka's mom? Could she be Tanaka's mom? What if this spirit, like, possessed her husband? And what if What if, like, the sun, that mark on Tanaka's neck where it looks like he's been grabbed or something, if it looks similar to the mark on Yoshiki's arm now, what if he was grabbed by the husband while he was possessed and hurt, and then the son left, joined this exorcist organization because she seems spiritually inclined, so he could be as well, and then has connections to this as well. So could she be Tanaka's family? Probably not, but I'm just gonna crack theory it until we know for sure. The show will tell us. One thing I loved about the symbolism of Yoshiki's bangs in this scene is that when he's looking at her, whenever he looks at Hikaru, the bangs are like on the side and they kind of frame to where you can see Hikaru fully, but everything else is blocked out by his hair. Here, she's partially blocked out as well. Like, he doesn't want to fully believe her or let her in that you can't stay together like this. Which, honestly, if he went to her and was like, hey, you were right, we couldn't stay together like we were, so I worked it out, I've accepted he's a monster, and now I'm totally down with it, she'd be like, okay. But she is right. As they are now, they could not stay together, because as long as he keeps believing that Anuki is Hikaru, he's going to be having these false expectations of, and then that's not fair to Anuki, right? It's not fair to him. He's like, what am I supposed to do, though? And she's like, I'm sorry. Because she tells him, she's like, well, I'm sorry, I don't want you to end up like me. So I think you ought to know the truth so you can move on from this. And that's when the parfaits arrive. Now, the parfaits themselves have like little mini chocolate donuts. Apt. Strawberries, apt. Pineapple, yeah. They have flan on them. Or creme brulee. It's either flan or creme brulee. I'm like, okay. They've got extra ice cream scoops, like the little Pocky sticks, which I eat Pocky sticks. The vanilla wafers. The only thing I would be like is not American is the little oranges. I don't ever think of those as ties to Americana, but whatever. It is extremely indulgent. The Mountain President Parfait. Well, what can you do? So then we go back to the high school. I like the high school. Hikaru is looking around in the rain. It's dreary. I love our Yuri couple that are concerned about them. Yuki and Asako. I like both of them. They're too precious. I don't want anything bad to happen to them. But I like both of them. Like, you guys need to get that back together. So then Hikaru shows up. Now, whenever Yoshiki is remembering and Hikaru says, I don't want to kill you, that is a line that we have to work through, because Yoshiki is correct in saying that that means he could kill me if he wanted to. Well, yes, but he doesn't want to. And that's when he says, Nonuki-sama. So he remembers the one woman saying that. So the woman said, Nonuki-sama, but we know Hikaru and them remember Unuki-sama. So are they different? Nonuki and Unuki. Are they different beings? Are they the same? But again, Yoshiki's not asking him, so what do? Something locked away on the mountain. And then the mysterious death. I love the idea of the distortion and like the drop of ink in the water, like distorting it. Yeah. And then he's like, what the hell are you? Well, you probably need to ask him, but that's going to probably have to wait till next episode. I can't believe we're a fourth of the way through this season. I mean, this was a great fourth of the way, like, marker point, right? This is a great... if we're doing the four-act structure, like Japanese four acts in this season, and I know that this is continuing beyond this season, the manga's ongoing, I know, but for the sake of this season, if we're splitting this season into four acts, then episodes 1 through 3 are all about introductions to our characters and our scenarios, which I think we've successfully accomplished that in this. That would mean episodes 4, 5, and 6 would be our story mode, which seems like it's being set up now that Yoshiki's like, somebody's going to have to teach you. And I'm like, BL elements, here we come, hopefully. And then episodes 7 through 8 are what we call the twist in the story. I think that is going to be where I think by episode 6, we're going to get into like Tanaka getting involved and things are going to start to escalate. And then I think 7, 8, and 9 with the rule of 8 involved. I'm so excited when we get to that episode. But I think that this is going to be where things go off the rails. And then 10 through 12 are going to be building to the climax and the resolution of the season. We'll find out. But yeah. I'm so excited. It's going to be great. But he's like, I need to move on from this. I need to move on from Hikaru. And that's when Hikaru shows up. And to Hikaru's credit, he's really innocent in this. He's like, why, are you in a mood today? And he says, yes. And then he tries to make the face, but that's what is the straw that breaks the camel's back for Yoshiki, because Hikaru making the face is something that Hikaru was known for. And Yoshiki's like, but you're not him. So quit trying to do things that he does to appease to me, because I know it's not you and it's just confusing me and making me mad. And he finally comes out and essentially says that. And to Hikaru, aka Inoki's credit, he does ask Yoshiki what's up. He's like, why are you being this way? You don't look so good. What's happening? And he shoves him away. So we get this other trope, this BL trope of the one character deflecting and the other one interrogating. Like, why are you deflecting? Why are you being this way? What have I done? Like, what's going on? There's like this miscommunication. Let's get to the bottom of it. And he's like, you're clearly in a bad mood, so it's probably my fault. And he's like, you're definitely pissed off. What's your deal? And I like that Inuki kind of gets mad. He's like, what did I do? What's going on? And Yoshiki's been afraid to say anything because he doesn't want Inuki to kill him. But at this point, he's like, if I keep this up, I'm going to fall apart. So I just have to say it. And then he's like, okay, well, what were you doing in town last weekend? Why are you secretly messaging a stranger? And he's like, why do I have to tell you anything? And he's like, well, you used to tell me everything. And that's when Yoshiki gets mad. And Yoshiki's like, yeah, I used to tell Hikaru everything. But you're not Hikaru. So I don't have to tell you. It's basically establishing this idea of trust with a new partner, which is a BL trope. And what's so cool is that in other BL series, the trope would be like, oh, well, with your best friend, you can talk to him, but you can't talk to me. The thing is, the best friend is him. And that's what's so messed up. Like, I'm watching Cherry Magic. Like I said, in Cherry Magic, the main character has a best friend. And this isn't a spoiler. You all can go watch and figure out the full context. But in that series, the main character has a best friend. And the love interest is kind of jealous for a hot second, being like, well, but you guys have all this trust. And the main character's like, yeah, we grew up. We're best friends. We've known each other forever. There's this trust there. And I love this because this is making that trope be more complicated by the fact that the new love interest is simultaneously in the body of the old love interest. It is wild. It is crazy. And he's like, what is this all about? And he's like, well, you're mad because I'm not the real Hikaru. And he's like, yeah. And I like the metaphor of the snapping thread. And he's like, am I not good enough for you? And that's such a line where Inuki is like, well, so you're mad because I'm not your former friend and I'm impersonating him and this isn't good enough for you. And it's not that it's not good enough. It's just that Yoshiki's like, I can't deal with it. And I love that as he's holding him, he's like getting into the body of before, like it's his anger eroding. So if you told me that Inuki was the one that killed Matsura because he took on this form where he was consumed by all of these negative thoughts and jealousy and all that, I would believe you. We don't have confirmation, but I would believe you. And then he's grabbed him by the arm and he's like, well, that should be obvious. Your voice, your face, even the way you talk is just like Hikaru. But you're not him. But you're not him. He's like, so you need to quit pretending to be him because I can't love you for you if you're trying to be someone else. And I was like, oh. And then Unuki's like, you're right. I can't argue with that. Oh. But he grabs the arm and he does hurt Yoshiki in that moment. He's like, but I need you. I can't function without you. And Yoshiki tells him to get out of there. He's like, but I can't function without of you. And then he hears like these voices in his head of Yoshiki being like, you're nothing but a fake. And he's like, I don't know anymore. I don't know which emotions are mine anymore. And then like what he's hearing from Yoshiki's in his head. And I feel like Yoshiki, whenever he says I don't know what emotions are mine anymore, I feel like that was the turning point where Yoshiki went, oh, wait, so, okay, you have your own emotions that are separate from Hikaru's memories. Oh, I felt like that was the moment of him going, oh shit, you are your own entity. You're just struggling like I'm struggling. Again, there is a moment in Cherry Magic, that series, and another BL series that I've seen too, where a lot of times the main character, one thing they are attracted to by the opposite party is that not that the party is, hot or smart or anything. It's the fact that they can empathize with them. The fact that they're like, oh, you're struggling too. You're not perfect like I'm not perfect. We can share that with one another. Yoshiki's not perfect. He is seriously flawed. And something he realizes about this entity is that even though it's a terrifying monster, it's flawed too. And he can relate to it. And it's like, okay, all right. But yeah. He's like, you can't stay together like this. And he's like, it wouldn't matter even if I did. I can't stop myself from liking you. So we get the confession. We get the confession from Unuki that he likes Yoshiki. That it's all him. It's not Hikaru's feelings, but they are his own. And yeah. And the fact that whenever he has these feelings and he kind of kind of gets into a trance and that entity like overflows out of him, it's like, and Yoshiki's like, well, shit, there's this giant sludge monster. And the thing when it like goes up into the ceiling, it felt very Studio Ghibli. It felt very, Spirited Away is what I was wanting to say. It very much felt that way. But yeah, so it surrounds Yoshiki. And Yoshiki's like, oh god, and he falls over, loses the shoe. The shoe comes off the foot. I wonder if is there symbolism in Japan with losing one shoe? Okay, which Ghibli characters lose a lot of shoes. Now, I know that if you abandon both pair of shoes, it's a sign of, like, you're going to commit suicide. So, is there significance with losing one shoe? Oh, okay, there's a TV trope. Losing a shoe in the struggle. Okay, and there's a picture of Jane from Tarzan here. It says sometimes as a result of the danger they are in, a character can take clothing damage, but clothing damage is often associated with fan service, blah, blah, blah. What about losing a shoe in the struggle? It doesn't have to be a shoe. It could be a hat, a pair of glasses, a necklace, or some article of clothing. Even hair getting messed up for a character whose hair is normally well kept is a visual sign of danger. Anything gets G-rated but noticeable. Missing a shoe is certainly noticeable, and even missing a hat on a character who always is known for wearing one gets the point across visually. Sometimes losing a shoe is done in comedic situations, such as one flying out of a big ball of violence. Bonus points if it clocks an innocent bystander. This trope is often truth in television. In periods of high activity or drastic changes in motion, including a person being thrown off the air, off their feet, light and loose clothing articles are likely to fly off. In more serious situations, the character is now barefoot as a showing of vulnerability, and it can become being a broken heel if the rider needs to hamper his or her ability to run. This could be accompanied by agony of the feet. For instance, if a person steps into a bear trap or a sharp object, blah, blah, blah. It says, please note this trope doesn't cover instances of someone voluntarily removing their shoes before the struggle and then not having enough time to put it back on. Okay, interesting. Compare to hat damage, which is when an unimportant article of clothing takes damage but remains with the person. Also compare a stripping snag, where a piece of clothing gets removed by something holding it back, and giving them the strip, where a character intentionally removes a piece of their clothing, like a jacket, in order to escape. Interesting. So yeah, okay. So yeah, the idea of creating vulnerability there, where that definitely applies to Yoshiki in this sense. But yeah, now, all of this entity Unuki is like surrounding Yoshiki's body, right? And in surrounding the body, it's all pouring out of the eye from Hikaru towards Yoshiki and envelops his head. And at first, as it envelops his head, is it like a kiss? Is it like a monster kiss? Yeah, kind of. It's a mind meld. It's kind of like a monster kiss. And at first, Yoshiki says, gross, this is nasty. But then it starts to envelop him and goes into his nose and everything. He says, this feels so nasty. But then he says, this feels good? Question mark. So, again, if we're going to talk about sexual innuendo, we're going to talk about the idea of what is originally deemed nasty upon experience becomes something that is determined to feel good or be welcomed. Now, with that being said, there is a conversation about consent in this moment, because you can very much make the idea of, was Yoshiki was not necessarily consenting to this moment. Did he consent to this monster coming into his... When it said he's coming inside, I was like, really show? Really show? So I do feel for Yoshiki. So I think he's being violated a bit in this moment. Yes. Again, Hikaru is not in full control of their body at this moment when they're overwhelmingly emotionally compromised, which again is still a problem. However, Hikaru, the one thing that saves Hikaru from me getting like with him in this moment is that he feels horrible, apologizes, and then withdraws completely and waits for Yoshiki to come find him, which we'll talk about. But it is comparable in a way to another Donmai that I've read, Scum Villain Self-Saving System. There's a scene in that, although that scene is way more graphic, and I'm not going to talk about it, and bothers me in other different ways. But this is similar in the sense that Yoshiki did not ask for this, and I'm not a fan of the whole, oh, you'll start to like it mentality. I hate that. Hate that. But I would like to think of this scene not going that route, and this scene being more of a representation of Yoshiki in denial, episode title drop, of his emotions, but once he kisses the monster, he realizes that, oh wait, actually no, I like this. And that's a decision that he has control of. He says, does this feel good? Now, again, he's like, what is it doing? And he's like, it's coming inside of me. Well, not in ways that you would think of, but in different ways. It's trying to invade his brain. So when it invades his brain, we see a village, a tiny village, probably from Nuki's perspective, and then someone that we think could be Hikaru. All of Hikaru's family look the same. All of his dad look the same. So this is probably an ancestor. And they're like, Hikaru, no, it's not him. And he's carrying a freaking head. It's carrying a head. What are you holding? He's carrying a head. A severed human head. So again, is that the head? Is that the head that is the shrunken head from the episodes prior? Did the original Indo ancestor murder someone on the mountain, and the head that they're carrying is what's been protecting them from harm? Is that shrunken head? Is this Inuki? And they're basically carrying that head, and that's Inuki, and its spirit's been with them the whole time. We're going to find out. We're going to find out, but that family's involved in some ritual that I think has protected their family, but also is going to lead to some scary shit. We'll see. We'll see. But anyway, he gets up. He got the mark on his hand now from the ED. So he's got the mark on his hand. And I'm glad at least we got, when I saw the ED last episode, I was like, ooh, did I see a spoiler? Should I have seen that? But instead we got the hand, at least is, that part solved. And he's like, what the hell am I doing? I can't. Not you. So this is, in this moment, Hikaru feels immediately terrible about what he's done. He feels bad that he's violated Yoshiki and hurt him. And so he's like, I don't want to hurt you. I love you. And he feels bad, and he immediately starts to break down and apologize and say that he's sorry. And then he grabs his backpack and he leaves. Which made me feel okay with it. I was like, okay, he is apologizing. He's leaving the scenario. He's getting out of Yoshi's space. He's leaving him, and he doesn't pursue him again. And he says, don't hate me, is all he asks. And that's what we're left with. So then, inside his home, Yoshiki's like, I'm pathetic. He's like, I was trying to ignore it this whole time. That thing could never really replace Hikaru. Yeah. So I think in this moment, Yoshiki's like, yeah. Now, the thing is, the girls in the class don't seem to notice the handprint. So I'm like, do they just not notice? Or do they just not care? They're not pointing it out? But I'm glad that Yoshiki is realizing that Inuki is not a replacement for Hikaru. That's not possible. That can't be. I can't keep treating him like he's the real Hikaru either. And he's like, that's why I said what I said. And he moves his hand away from Hikaru in the vision. But, they're back at school and everything. And that's when the girls are like, did something happen between you two? And then they're like, did you guys have a fight? And they're like, we don't know what happened, but just make amends already. I feel like Hikaru's been obsessed with you lately. So, in this moment, Yoshiki gets an outside perspective from the girls, where he's just like, yeah, we had a fight, it's no big deal. And they're like, well, he really likes you, so make up. And then Yoshiki's like, wait, what? They're like, yeah, he's been obsessed with you lately. And they're like, don't be mean to him. And then the other girl says, seriously, I feel like Hikaru's clinging a lot to you lately. Yeah, like a little brat clinging to his mama, huh? And like, watch that mouth, girl. Like, these two ladies here, these two ladies are amazing. I want only the best for them. Do not give me Doomed Yuri show. I will be upset because they are precious and they deserve the best. And Yoshiki's like a kid. And then he thinks back to all the moments where they're like, Yoshiki. Like, this monster is learning from their world and is innocent. I feel like in that moment, Yoshiki feels that Inuki has the innocence of a child, where Inuki is not this evil being that's a monster hell-bent on destruction like some of the townsfolk would make him out to be. But instead, Inuki is this innocent presence that's kind of like a kid, where he's like, I don't know what to think. And so I'm kind of looking to you for guidance. Which is a terrifying aspect in itself, because Yoshiki's not exactly the picture of stability. And he's like, don't hate me. And I felt that Yoshiki, who, again, probably struggles with the same conflict with his own family. Like, you get the impression when he looks at his parents, he's asking them, don't hate me because I'm different. Don't hate me because I'm not what you expect me to be. And that thought process is when he looks at Inuki in Hikaru's body, he's like, oh my God, he's the same as I am. And if I shun him away, how am I any better? And that's when he's like, well, I'm gonna have to go head out and find him. And they're like, what? And he's like, see you tomorrow. And then the fact that Hikaru was just in the corner, wrapped up in the blanket, looking like he's shielded in his own little cave. And then, yeah, he's like, Hikaru, are you here? I love it that he brings in, he's like, I'm sorry about yesterday. He's like, why are you apologizing? I'm the one who should be sorry after what I did to you. And he's like, well, I'm not mad. And when he reaches out, I like that he flinches at the hand. And Hikaru's like, well, you're scared of me, aren't you? You flinched. And he's like, I'm not afraid of you. And he's like, yes, you are, especially after seeing me like that. He's like, I'm a monster. Just, which he is. But again, we've established Yoshiki is not exactly your average normal teenager, right? I grossed you out, didn't I? I'm so freaking embarrassed. And he's like, oh, that. Well, that's not what He's like, well, do you hate me now? And then he pulls it off and he's like, listen to me, Yoshiki. I just want to be with you. That's all I need. So yeah, this monster is in love with Yoshiki. This monster's in love with Yoshiki and wants to be a stage 5 clinger. And Yoshiki decides in this episode that that is fine. Better my friend than someone that wants to kill me. And he's like, I don't. And then now when Hikaru says this, when he says, I don't care who you hang out with, just don't hate me. And he's like, I'm not going to do that again. To me, that would open up the possibility of Yoshiki being able to go talk to Ri and be like, hey, we need to come to the bottom of this. Like, I feel like Yoshiki seeing that flashback with Hikaru and getting the okay from Hikaru now to go and investigate as long as he's like with Yoshiki and with Hikaru, I feel like it's going to open some doors. That's going to open some doors. He's like, I know I'm just an intruder using your friend's body. Uh-huh. But I'm sorry about taking liberties with it. Again, I'm really glad that Inuki says this to him. Like, he's like, I'm sorry I took your friend's body. I just was trying to, like, be your friend and get you to like me, and I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that again. I'm just going to be me. And he's like, this isn't good. And then we see the sunflowers, which are transformation, standing bold in adversity, a regeneration after a great loss. The great loss is Hikaru. But now we're going to regenerate with this new eldritch monster. He's like, I shouldn't be getting so close. I shouldn't be a monster fucker, but here we are. It's dangerous. Well, there's a song, what's that song called? Maybe by Kelly Clarkson. The last line of it is, I should know better than to touch the fire twice, but I'm thinking that maybe I might. That song is, are these two. Yes, that song are these two, 100%. And him, like, grabbing the head. I thought he was going to kiss him. I thought he was going to kiss him when he was, like, doing this. I was like, is Yoshiki about to kiss him? Are we about to get that? But they've given us too much in this episode already. They're already doing end credits over this, so we're probably going to get that next episode. He's like, you're more of a brat than Hikaru ever was. That smile, because if you think about it, Yoshiki, the reason why he's had all these conflicting thoughts and has had this sexual awakening is because of the monster. I mean, being in Hikaru's body helped to jumpstart that, because it was like taking your best friend and your best friend being into you, and you're like, oh, well, yes. But I think that now Yoshiki's like, you know, you're not the same as Hikaru. And I kind of like you. I like your personality. It just makes it complicated because you're in my best friend's body, but I like you. It's like, And then he's like, well, aren't you mad? And he's like, no, you're just a lonely little brat, aren't you? And then that's when Hikaru's like, lonely. Is that what this emotion is? And Yoshiki knows that feeling all too well, so he can relate. And him smiling, being like, I don't know. But maybe this Hikaru doesn't know anything. And if he's really that naive, then I've just got to teach him a few things. I'm like, oh, buddy. I'm like, Yoshiki, we're, and there's that mark. Yeah, so that mark that he has on his arm looks similar to the mark that Tanaka has on his neck. So I'm wondering if it's similar, right? We'll see. I've just got to teach him a few things. I mean, and then we have the sunflowers dying. Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. Oh! Ooh! So, is Yoshiki gonna be like, hey, Hikaru, let's solve crimes together. And, you know, you just knowing that this series goes beyond this season, I think within the manga, I'm kind of like, what else could they do after this? But if they teamed up to go battle crime. In BL, don't tease me, show. Don't make me have these great thoughts. But this episode was really good. This episode's really good. And I was like, are we going to get into some crazy things? We might get into some crazy things. Also, not sure if you all knew, but I'm working on another video essay now. And I have found out, I don't know if I mentioned this with episode 2, but I found out that Cygames, the people doing this series, are also the ones responsible for that game that came out, the horse girl anime game, the Uma Musume. Yeah, I'm doing a video essay about that at some point. I've got a long way to go in researching it, but I found that out the other day from the moderator, from one of the moderators on my channel, and they were like, yeah, Cygames made all that money out of that horse girl anime, and they're able to make this series. And I'm like, you know what? Sometimes using money taken from gambling addicts can be applied to positive things like high quality yaoi, and I'm kind of here for it. There's a lot more to that. I'm going to save that for the video essay, but oh my God. This episode was crazy. This episode was great. I can't believe I have to wait another week before episode 4, but it's gonna be worth it, y'all. So I'm very excited to hear your thoughts down below because I've talked for nearly an hour and 12 minutes about this series. So I can't wait to hear your thoughts down below. I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah. I'm going to be back very soon, and we're going to have some more of Summer Hikaru Died to talk about. And I'll see you then.